And remember to silence your cell phones if you have them. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I'll move it.
Second?
Second by Taylor. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 2 through 6 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the October 24th meeting. Item 3 is approval of the claims. Item 4 from the county treasurer includes A, approved property tax refund request for parcel ending in 006 in the amount of $322. B is the same for parcel ending in 008 in the amount of $226. C is the same for a parcel ending in 002 in the amount of $438,476,000. If that seems like a large number, it's because it is, but it was due to a court case and a court order. So we're taking a procedural move tonight. Item D is approved property tax refund request for parcel ending in 004 in the amount of $1,457. Item 5 from Human Resources includes A, approval of the memorandum of personnel transactions, B, presentation of award certificate to Cynthia Weimold for a generous donation of 18 gallons of blood to the LifeServe Blood Center.
Due to it being Halloween, could you do that more in a Dracula voice?
I didn't even practice. I mean, if you've practiced, you can. Thank you to Cynthia.
We want to thank you.
Should have talked to me before the meeting, Keith. Sorry. It's all right. Next time. Item 6 in board administration is approval of resolution for suspension of taxes for initials DS. I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 7, from the Weed Commissioner, Mr. Jared Jepson. Woodbury County has gone to war against noxious weeds, and we are here to receive the 2023 status report of that war and to direct the chair to sign the permit. This is a brutal war of attrition. Every year, we hope to reduce the number of noxious weeds more than they grow.
We also have these wanted posters here for you, for any of these known evildoers, the wild carrot and Russian knapweed that.
Who put these up?
Oh, I just made them for you.
Perfect. I got them in mind too.
He's already done it.
You're not the first person to hand me that stuff, I promise. Any questions on there?
So, the 42,000 approximate chemical expenditure, I'm trying to remember, is that kind of in line with where we were in past years, or would you say inflation's kind of hit that number?
No, it's up again.
Okay.
And it will be, as of February, it'll jump again. I mean,
Okay.
there's just, chemicals keep going up. They don't see it coming back down, that's for sure. I hate to say that, but
Jared, what was the chemical change that you started about 2.5, 3 years ago, if I remember correctly?
what did we change?
Right.
Okay, so we used to use a lot of Grazon P&D and stuff like that. We went to Milestone. Actually, I'm using a Whetstone. It's the same as Milestone, comes out of the same vat, the whole 9 yards. It's a generic. So that with that, where you're only using 5 to 7 ounces per acre versus using a half a gallon of chemical per acre.
Okay.
So we've changed up things a little bit. That it doesn't have the smell, so that if you do drive by somewhere and you're spraying, it doesn't have that smell where someone comes out and says, "Oh, my garden," you know.
Yeah. And you've been able to go closer to certain waterways or areas or? what-
Water's Edge.
Water's Edge.
Yes.
Okay.
And so with Grazon P&D, we had to stay back. We had to stay back away. So we can go to Water's Edge now with a lot of that stuff.
And you continue to use that same thing now?
I am.
Okay.
Yep. Until my chemical rep brings me on something new, and he talks to me like once a month, on what's going on, what he's seeing, what other people are using. If something else comes out that he likes or he thinks we should take a look at, I'm willing to try it.
Okay.
And usually they will give you some kind of samples to go use somewhere and just see what you think of it.
Okay. Thanks.
How has it been with, as far as, responding to citizen concerns? Is everyone sort of getting used to you being on the county engineer's page and?
Most of them are good. We had one fella this year that was a little bit, I don't think he liked to spray into crown vetch. It was the crown vetch, I think. He didn't think we should be killing any crown vetch. He thought maybe we should leave that alone.
Some what now?
It was crown vetch. It used to be in the seeding specs for the state, for the county and everything like that. They took away that stuff because it has a big stem and a big umbrella of canopy, and then it washes a whole bunch of erosion underneath of it, and then it takes off and takes over the whole ditch. It kills the brome and everything else. I did spray some of that south of his house a ways, and I was notified when it started to die. And did he talk to you too, Mark, or not? Yeah. I tried my best to explain my case to him, but I think by the time we got done, he was upset I hadn't had my COVID shot. That's where that conversation went. It didn't go very well at all. And I said to Mark, you might want to take care of this one.
I know Mark loves those conversations, so.
Yeah, it's easy to pass it on to him.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't find any Palmer out there. That's one that we don't
Right.
want to have here.
It's
so.
getting closer.
I know.
Yeah.
It is.
It'll be here sometime. I mean, do what we can,
Yeah.
but
And those thistles imported by Elon Musk, the Musk thistles,
they can get thick, can't
Yeah.
they? Yep.
these names are just immortalized, when they get named.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to look for out there.
Well, I'll go ahead and move the report there.
Second?
Motion by Radig, second by Bidinger. Any questions, comments?
I have one question.
concerns?
What is your least favorite weed?
Oh.
Everybody has one.
Probably Canadian thistles.
Okay.
We fight Canadian thistles a lot, and they are hard to, like, where you kill them this year, you might not see them for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're back. You're in a farming deal, you see it, I'm sure. I mean, it's just that and brush. We fight a lot of brush. We spend a lot of money on brush.
I think I asked him that quite a few years ago, so it was the same answer.
Yeah, it's crazy. You can't grow a tree in your yard, save in the ditch. They'll grow, I promise.
Remains a worthy adversary.
Yes.
Hearing no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Item number 8 from Planning and Zoning, Mr. Daniel Priestley, series of items for action, and starting with A, to receive the final staff report and the Zoning Commission's recommendation from their October 23rd meeting to approve the final plat of Backacre Estates, second filing, which is a minor subdivision.
Yes, the zoning commission sends their recommendation for this one lot subdivision, basically to split off the house from the ground. It went through extraterritorial review with the city of Sioux City. The county engineer did recommend a pavement agreement be signed because there's been other ones out there on 162nd Street, just south of Highway 20. That document's been executed and ready to be recorded, and everything looks in order with the subdivision.
I'd move to receive the final staff report and the zoning commission's recommendation from their 10/23 meeting to approve the final plot of Backacres Estates, second filing, a minor subdivision.
Second the motion by Taylor. Any questions?
It's not a chiropractor, is he?
That was a joke.
Yeah. No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
I'd move to accept and approve Backacre Estates, second filing, a minor subdivision of Woodbury County, Iowa, with the requirement that a pavement agreement also be recorded with the final plat.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Radig on 8B. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item C is to receive the final staff report and the zoning commission's recommendation from their October 23rd meeting to approve the final plat of Gray First Edition, a minor subdivision.
And the Gray subdivision is really the same situation, just split away the house area from farm ground area, and there is no extraterritorial review as this exceeds 2 miles, and the zoning commission, of course, sends their recommendation for approval.
I'll move it.
I'll second the motion by Radig. Hearing any discussion? I'm not. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
Move to accept and approve the Gray First Edition, a minor subdivision of Woodbury County.
I'll second the motion by Taylor. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Item 9 from the Board of Supervisors for information. This is from Mr. Bittinger and Mr. Nelson. This is an update on legal fee expenditures to date for open records requests as approved by the board on August 8th, 2023.
Yes, Chairman, just looking to just get an update on what's been spent to date on that. So, Dennis, can you give us an update on that, please?
We have actually issued 2 claims, one for $3,563 and the other one was $906 for a total of $4,469. It is pretty much done. There might be 1 or 2, questions down the road possibly, but you did allocate $20,000, so it stayed well below what could have been.
Okay, and that was out of gaming, correct? Gaming revenue?
Yes.
Okay.
No, that came out of liability. fund.
Liability, okay.
Yeah,
Liability, okay.
self-liability fund.
All right. Thank you, sir. That's all that I have, Chairman, on that issue.
Any other questions for Dennis? Mr. Taylor?
Do you know what the total of our liability fund is approximately?
Ooh, probably about 800,000 now. We got $1 million to transfer over from general stuff is where we levy the money over.
Okay.
In fact, hang on a second, I'll tell you exactly what's in there. Well, I haven't transferred the money. We're 372,000 in the red, but when I transfer the $1 million over, we'll be about 700,000, about 680,000 ahead.
Thank you.
You submitted this item as well, Mr. Nelson. Anything to add?
Nope, I appreciate it, Dennis, and we just had some citizens ask us questions about what the status of this was, and so we just wanted to kind of wrap it up. So,
All right. Any other questions on it? Thank you, Dennis. We'll move on to item 10 from the Board of Supervisors for information. This is from Mr. Nelson. This is correction and information regarding statements made about Baker Group's compensation.
and I apologize for my voice. It's kind of leaving me today, so I'll do my best here. I'm also going to try to rope this into an LEC update, as we were going to do that every 2 weeks. 3 or 4 weeks ago, I commented about the contract extension with Baker Group that the LEC had done and talked about what we had paid thus far, and just wanted to clear up some things that were said 2 weeks ago involving that contract, just to make sure that we weren't miscommunicating anything to the public. But there was some statement made that Baker Group also gets compensation from a change order. That is not correct. Baker Group got a lump sum fee at the beginning. No refundables or anything of that nature. It was just a flat fee. And I've got a letter that I'll read shortly here that kind of addresses that. But Hausman, the general contractor, and Goldberg Group Architect, they do get a percentage fee for every change order. But Baker Group does not, and they have not since the beginning of the project. Secondly, there was a notion that Baker Group is intentionally delaying the project so that they could continue to get paid. Their contract originally ended the day that the jail was supposed to open. There was no automatic renewal or anything like that. So there was never anything set in stone that if the project went over that they were going to continue to get paid. And everything that we've seen on our end, that they have done their job and they've tried their best to keep it on track. But at the end of the day, they are not responsible for having people show up to work or do the tasks, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to clear those two things up, and I've got a letter from Baker Group that just kind of lay out how they've been paid through this project. It was in the backup material. Actually, I might ask Chairman Ung to read that, just because my voice is kind of getting weak here, but, and then after that, I'll go into an LEC update.
This is a letter dated October 25th on Baker Group letterhead, addressed to the Board of Supervisors. It says, Woodbury County Board of Supervisors, Baker Group's fee was based on 3% of the original contract sum of $58,390,000. The original fee would have been $1,751,700. The contract with change orders is now $60,833,768. Baker Group's fee based on the original 3% of the contract with change orders would have been $1,825,013.04. Amendment number 1 fixed the fee at $1,325,000. That changed the Baker Group fee from 3% of the original contract with change orders to 2.2% of the contract without change orders. Typically, owner's representatives receive additional reimbursables such as meals, lodging, office, and printing expenses and mileage. Baker Group included reimbursables with this contract. Baker Group's fee is a lump sum fee. There were no extra fees on top of that fee. Thank you sincerely, Shane Albrecht, Senior Project Manager of the Baker Group.
I guess if there's any questions about that.
I just do want to make one request moving forward on our financial recaps there, Dennis. So this was from the August 29th one. On the increased amount, could it say with change orders and contract extensions?
Are you talking about this one here, that room and board?
It was from August 29th.
Okay. I don't do that one anymore, I do this one, it's updated here,
Okay.
I give you each week.
And then I'd also kind of like a key for the funds, the 0005, 4750, 4751. Just, it'd be nice to know what those are, maybe at the bottom if you could put like a key.
What the fund number is for taxable and non-taxable.
Yeah, because there's been two different,
Yeah.
you know, the LEC does a statement and the dentist does one, so they're slightly different. We could try to clarify both of those. So that's fair.
And to, I guess, back up where the statement came from is, I mean, this says right on here, change orders. And when I asked about it, they said, well, it must be they must get paid on change orders as well. So there was a background to that notion. So it is good to have this on the agenda to clear it up.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not offended by having it on here or anything. I want the right information to be out there for the public. It's just, when I saw this, it was concerning because it made it look like there was a benefit to approve any and all change orders, whereas that's not the case. So it's good to have that clear.
Well, I think it could be alleviated by just checking into it a little bit more in the future. Dennis creates documents for us every day, and, you know, there may be something lost in translation, but a contract signed by the authority and things like that should be consulted. Also, it's not really in line with what Baker Group has done for Woodbury County, if we were to believe that. I remember we as a board, I think we all thanked them when the construction agreement came in 30% or so above bid, and it did not affect the contract flat rate. So that's, as we've been talking about gestures, you know, that's certainly a gesture and certainly something that has saved the county money when the project inflated. Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, and I'm appreciative of the clarification, and just so people know what we're talking about, this is a report from you, correct, Dennis? And it says Baker Group's original, $1,325,000, and to what Chairman Ong just referenced, it says with change orders, $1,463,000. And it says Baker Group. So it would lead anyone to believe that that's increased, so I can see where that confusion came from, but thank you for
Anybody
for
that read the
correcting it. I mean, this
record or
was a
read our
report.
minutes, that's
Yeah.
what they read, so.
But it's good to have it cleared, and I'm appreciative of the agenda item.
Anything else to add?
Nope.
Yeah, I would just remind everyone, even accidental misstatements based on memos that don't have all the information, I think, not necessarily from the board only, but the public is starting to become a little up in arms about the project manager, owner's rep, whatever they are. But I think the public deserves some context here, and this is on the agenda, so I think it's the appropriate time. Obviously, they are brought into Woodbury County by Mr. Taylor, and they did a great job with the LED lighting project, I believe in 2016, around 2015, around there. Their first change order at that time actually saved the county money, deleted things from the bid. Since then, I searched through our minutes, and not to belabor things, but we've relied and trusted Baker Group to study the closure of the Prairie Hills facility, present a facility improvement master plan, manage the courthouse and old LEC HVAC controls automation upgrade, manage the courthouse steam trap replacement project, district health boiler replacement, hydronic system upgrade, several old LEC projects in the conference room to the kitchen, courtroom renovations in the courthouse, old LEC expansion, and then optimization plan projects, courthouse automation controls project, LEC HVAC controls replacement project, Trosper-Hoyt master control and security project, Trosper-Hoyt elevator replacement project, manage the courthouse HVAC project, recommend engineers to study replacement of HVAC systems at Dorothy Pico Nature Center, and provide assistance in county filings regarding ARPA funds. 31 projects for Woodbury County without issue and on these projects, there's probably been 100 to 200 change orders. And obviously on all sorts of different structures of compensation. But I think we owe a little bit of benefit of the doubt to this. And to me, I would be first to jump on, and investigate more this original concern if they were an unknown. But Baker Group has provided services, and there is no motive. What is the motive for Baker Group to underperform for a county that they provided oversight for 31 projects, which has probably paid far in excess of what they're looking at right now? So this is to clear the air in the community. Some of the statements from community members, and not just board members, have resulted in this sort of, we've all received emails about their performance, and it kind of feels like we're being told this inexperienced group that knows nothing and has done one project and now they're doing this and they've bungled everything. Or we don't know if they're at fault, or we don't know if they benefited from this and what incentive do they have. Well, they have no incentive. If you did 31 projects for a county, you'd want to do 31 more. There'd be no reason. So as glad as I am that this is on the agenda, I'm also kind of not, and I'm also kind of annoyed I'm having to say something or feel I need to say something, because we are, not everyone watches every meeting. They receive the statement, they don't necessarily watch the next meeting or the meeting after that. So I think we just need to do a little more digging in the future. That's all I have to say.
And I appreciate that, and I will say that this project has been going on much longer than I've been here, or for sure on the LEC, and so I try my best to get information for everybody, but usually I have to go to somebody else like Shane or Dennis or Karen, but I'm trying. But in our last meeting, Dan Moore and Ron Wick said, always feel free to reach out to them, and if you can't track them down, I'll make sure that they answer their phones. But just appreciate the opportunity to try to clear things up, and the LEC hasn't been perfect on their end as far as, recording documents, that sort of thing. I mean, what we just saw there with that deal, we could obviously clear that up, make it a lot clearer in the future, and so, things like that are helpful. and we'll try to keep moving the ball down the field. So if there's anything else, that's fine. Otherwise, I can move on to a update.
Any other comments before he moves on to an update?
I got this update this morning from Baker Group. Corrective work is being completed in the county attorney space in lower CF. The area was gone through the punch list the week of October 9. Additional punch lists were completed in the sheriff's office space, the court space, and the medical observation in upper C during the week of October 23rd, 2023. And corrective work in those spaces is now underway. As was reported after the meeting last week, 35 fire smoke dampers have been installed. There is one opening left to cut, so 37 of the 38 holes have been cut. 11 of those dampers need to be wired, and work has started on that wiring. So that is one thing that's changed from last week, from 2 weeks ago, so that's great. Accurate Controls, Inc. began installation of the building security electronics on Tuesday, October 17th, excuse me, and that work is continuing. That's good. We needed those guys in here to get that done. And work continues in all areas of the building. One of the things that was made quite clear when I was put on the LEC was that the supervisors, including myself, wanted to get out to the jail and see the progress in person. Chairman Ung and I went out there, I believe it was the last week of September. This coming Monday, November 6th, Supervisor Bittinger and I are going to be going out there. And then just today, we've slated to have Supervisor Raddick and myself go out there the first week of December. And Jeremy, not to be left out, we'll still try to get you in before Christmas or the first part of the year. But I'll be interested to get out there and see what's changed in 5 weeks, and appreciate the access to do that. That's all I have for a report, gentlemen.
Mark, do you know if the superintendent will be leading the tours?
I believe
again?
Hausman's, yeah, I believe their site manager, project manager will be leading us again, and then I believe it will be Todd Wick walking us around as well.
Okay. Well, it's positive to have the superintendent involved in all the tours, just so everyone gets the same sort of
Yep.
view. Anything else to report? Any good news? More good news?
Well, I thought the fire dampers were good news. And when they say corrective work, that's from the punch list. You know, the punch lists are the little things that they see that need done. So that's what that corrective work is. I'd be interested to get out there next week and check it out. So
I've heard punch list kind of mentioned a few different times in different contexts. Is that really after substantial completion, or is it kind of an advanced list that when we get to that point, it'll go more quickly because they've already addressed some of the known issues?
So it's a little both, right? So they've got it, good enough that they want to bring, and that's what Baker Group and Ron, that's what they're doing, is they're walking in, they're looking at the quality of the workmanship on these punch lists, and they're saying, nope, we want, paint needs touched up here, or this trim needs done here, or this door doesn't swing quite, it's a lot of that little type stuff, but they're just going over it with a fine-tooth comb on these punch lists to make sure that everything is perfect and it's done right when they're done. So that's the little stuff that they're going through now.
Since this is a LAC update, I didn't speak to you before the meeting about this, Sheriff, but is there anything you wanted to bring up about the progress at all, if that's okay with Mr. Nelson?
And while he's walking up here, the LEC will be having a public meeting next Tuesday, and then I believe there will be a joint closed session between the LEC and the Board of Supervisors prior to the Board of Supervisors meeting. And I've been talking with Karen. One of the things I believe it was Supervisor Taylor asked was to have the meetings recorded. And so we're hoping to have video recording of the LEC meetings going forward. Yeah, I'll let Sheriff Tigor.
Thank you.
I don't have a lot of update from the sheriff's office perspective. The only thing is I've had a few people reach out to me about some of the concerns just with the project as a whole, and some of the conversations that I've had with folks when they've called and talked to me. I think there's been this misunderstanding, or there's been this idea or this thought put out that somehow the LEC authority, the Board of Supervisors, or the Baker Group have been asleep at the wheel and kind of let the ball drop, so to speak, on this project. From what I know from being an outsider looking in, since I don't have any say in this building as far as, we're not part of the internal workings of this, but from an outsider's perspective, watching this and having the most communication with the Baker Group and with the LEC authority, at the end of the day, there is going to be plenty of blame to place on the reasons for this building being over on cost, for the building being delayed. But from my perspective, very little of that blame is going to fall at the feet of the Board of Supervisors, the LEC authority, or the Baker Group. You can read between the lines and see who else is left in the process, but there will be plenty of blame to lay at their feet. And one example that I would give, we didn't know this until we were out one day, and the front of the law enforcement center was torn out. It was finished. I had walked through the doors, the new law enforcement center doors. And the next time we went there, I don't even know, several weeks later, it's gone. The front of the building was torn out. And it was brought to our attention that Todd, while doing his work there, realized that one of the beams had not been galvanized properly. And when he discovered it, he reported it to Shane, and Shane made phone calls, and they were made to rip it out. And that's all at the expense of the contractor. And it was one example that, okay, they are paying attention, and they are not letting them get by with anything. I have been in meetings when Shane has called them on the carpet, and when all the cards are shown, and I think that's some of the difficulty right now, and I try to see it from everybody's different perspectives. I think some of they're keeping some of their cards close to their vest, knowing the amount of dollars that are going to be in play when litigation comes into this. And, I think maybe in hindsight, there could have been certainly better communication to the board sooner. But part of some of that is they didn't want to jeopardize the amount of money that we could recoup because of the mistakes that had been made by the other players involved. I don't want to call anybody out by name. It's not my place to do it. But I'm hoping that at the end of the day, when all the cards are laid on the table, that's what we see. And certainly that front entrance to me was kind of an eye-opening thing. I mean, it was almost alarming to see the whole front was gone. They made them tear it completely out. And there's a lot of other things that have happened like that throughout the project, where no, doesn't meet the standards of the owner on the advice of the Baker Group, and redo it, take it out, do it again, and so I think that I'm hoping that when this all comes out in the laundry, that's what we see. So.
Are you noticing more work or traffic from subcontractors out on the site?
I'm not out there enough, but the
Your office,
information that
perhaps.
I got the last time that I was out there is no. And I mean, I think, I want to be cautious about what I say publicly, because I don't want to jeopardize our standing in any further future litigation. I think you all are very well aware of my feelings from closed sessions. When the time is right, there will be people held accountable.
Okay. Anything else to add?
No.
Thank you.
Yes, I would say, it's good to know that at the end of the day, we get the building we pay for. That's a big concern. But of course, obviously, the timeliness at this point is getting to be close to a critical point. So if it was like minor details on sheetrock or something, I guess I'm willing to, let's get some occupancy going. But obviously, a steel beam that was not galvanized that should have been, do that right. So, we're definitely getting to the point where, from my perspective as the, looking at the finances of the county, we need this building done. So that is a major concern, and I think it should be all the board's concern as well.
Absolutely.
Doyle Turner, 2738 200th Street, Mobile. I know these kind of conversations aren't fun, but you guys are doing an awesome job. I hope that someday an attorney appreciates that when you put this type of thing together from meeting to meeting to meeting, this is exactly what an attorney wants to see. This is what the public needs to hear, and you're doing exactly what needs to be done. We need that kind of oversight, and you need this as a background in order to prove in the end that you're mitigating damages. So all of these uncomfortable conversations are exactly what an attorney wants to see. So keep it up, even though it isn't fun, but I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff, forgot something?
Sorry, yes, and it's just in relation to Doyle triggered something in my memory that is an update for you. So that from our perspective, the sheriff's office doing what we can do as far as securing revenue behind the scenes for when the building's open. There's one other thing that we have been doing, and that is limiting the expenditures as much as we possibly can prior to the building being open. So we have worked with the ACH, our medical, in delaying the increased medical costs until the building is open. So when September 13th started happening, we did not have an increased medical cost. So we've delayed those expenses and will continue to delay those expenses. Same thing with Summit Foods. And that is part of our obligation, is to not incur unnecessary costs just to try and then recoup them later in litigation. So we will continue to do that. We will continue to try and make those delays and not have any expenses that wouldn't be necessary moving forward. So I appreciate Doyle for triggering that memory for me.
And
I guess, that gives a chance to say thank you to the Sheriff's Department and everybody for being flexible with this. I know we see it as it hits us hard because we're trying to plan, but obviously it hits you guys real hard too, because you had intentions of moving, and I guess we could say the same for the attorney's office, so we're looking to move out there, but
And Labor Day weekend, when I had water and sewage and everything coming from the jail above my office into my office, we were really excited about getting into a new facility. Well, I was, for sure.
those kind of things only happen on Labor Day too.
I know a lot of that's true for the Building Services Department as well. I talked to Dennis earlier today, and, we are paying for some staff, but we're also not paying for some staff we budgeted because of the opening date being so delayed. The question of what does it cost is tough to answer because it's not a very precise question. Are you talking the fiscal year, calendar year, next month, last month? Is staff hired? Are they there? This is a phased-in approach to a massive project, so. Back to Baker Group compensation, is there any change, Mr. Nelson, that you're aware of, isn't it now they're on a $34,000 a month, month-to-month
That is correct. It's
contract?
month to month, so then next week, Tuesday, we would vote for another extension for the month of November.
Okay.
So for people that are asking why the need for the increase on that, do they have a reason? Was there an additional staff person? Is there an answer to that question?
For the increase from 23 to 34. The 23,000 was only a 6-month deal that they did from April to September. Life of the project, we've paid about 38,000. So they're just, and that was in my report 3 weeks ago. But life of the project, they're somewhere around 37,000. Before that 6 months at 23,000, we were paying about 39,000 a month. So they did that 23 kind of as a gesture to get us to the end. They didn't. It was just kind of for Todd and his support staff. And now that the project's going longer, they just cannot sustain that level of a discount with all of the staff and work that they're doing. So it looks like an increase, and that's what I was frustrated about at that LEC meeting. But it's actually still below what we've paid them on the average of the project.
Just real quick, and then I'll go to you, Mr. Taylor. Do you have any indication that the damper issue was known before the 6-month extension at the discounted rate?
No.
Okay.
The damper issue was found in June, and the Baker Group contract would have been renewed in April.
So do you have any indication for us, not to put you on the spot, but I know you had visited a little bit about where you might be personally, and I know you've also asked that the chairman not vote on that for obvious reasons. So in terms of where you're at personally on approving that, again, not to put you on the spot, I know that's an LAC authority, but just to understand, I know there was talk about going down to 23,000, I think. Supervisor Bittinger had suggested something a little less than that, if I remember correctly. And I know it's all kind of been a perfect storm. The question has been raised, whether, I think fairly or unfairly, if there's any responsibility. And I know we're kind of anecdotally saying, well, we assume, or, for us, they've been great in the past. And I'm not saying that they are or they're not, but it just seems ironic at the same time. So all of that to say, do you know where you're at?
I've talked about it with our county attorney, James Loomis, and with the LEC's attorney, Jody McDougall. And we've talked about it with Ron and Dan in our closed session. The conversation with James and Jody is that it is not a true conflict of interest, but more so the perception of a conflict of interest. And in the public realm, perception is reality. And so I have still asked that Ron simply recuse himself from that vote and from that discussion. That will be something we discuss at the public meeting next Tuesday. I'm not going to elaborate on what Ron's going to do. I'm not in his head what he will or won't do. But I've made that known publicly that was my request, and I've made it known to the LEC that was my request as well.
And it's up to each, I know Ron's not an elected official, but it's up to each person to
Correct.
either waive that conflict. We have several. And so you've received advice from the Baker Group's attorney, who happens to be the LAC Authority's attorney, that says that there's no conflict, who has an authority chairman so I'm appreciative that you're at least doing what you can, because I think you're right. The public, there's a reason that people have been questioning, and it's not, I think it's obvious. So thank you for what you're doing, and appreciate it.
I guess one more request maybe that would be a good thing for the backup in the LEC meeting is having Baker maybe put kind of a breakdown of the staff involved for that. What is it,
Yes,
30,
and
30?
not to cut you off, Keith, I appreciate that, and that was an underlying message at the last meeting too, and I don't want to speak for Shane, but last that him and I had talked on the subject that he was going to have a breakdown of expenses for this next meeting. So
And-
but I will make, since you said that, I will check on that, but that's the last we had talked about it, so.
And I think it'd be good for you guys to, receive that, put it in your backup material, have that be on the website. So when you go to the, Woodbury County LEC and somebody's digging into it, they can see that on our website. Because a lot of the concerns brought to me are brought by people that just go and click on there and read stuff. And if they find something lacking, I don't speak lawyer, I don't speak contract, but other people do, and then they see stuff's missing or, stuff gets brought up, and we want to be like dotting every I, crossing every T, making sure that everything is very detailed because, perception, you said, is one thing, but another thing is just the accountability factor. And again, this is not the Board of Supervisors project, it's the LEC project, and now you're a part of that, so you get all the extra fun and homework to do on that, but, and again, I do appreciate what you guys got to do and the LEC has to do. I do want to say that as well.
I know the county's always tried to supply all the information online it could, at least as from the board's perspective. Back when it was a expansion and modernization project, we essentially data dumped 80-something pages, everything we had, and all the committee meetings people said didn't happen, that were attended by citizens and the focus groups and everything, or when Taylor and I were on the, whatever it was called at the time, expansion committee. But there's definitely a jolt and a learning curve to get that all up, but we're definitely going to make sure that the recordings and any documents, just another request of Mark Nelson here, anything you see, just go home, look and see if it's online by the time you get home.
Yeah, and, and by the time myself and Ron and Dan get done with our 5th LEC authority, our 5th jail project, we'll probably be pros at this, right? But no, to Keith's point, there have been comments raised from the public about certain articles, publications, that sort of thing, not being put on the website. And so those we have gotten uploaded, we don't know how they fell through the cracks. And, we apologize and, ask us questions, and I'll sure try to make sure that those are there. And I think one thing too is we've got some county staff that are doing extra for the authority that I don't think are you getting compensated more, Karen, for all your help, or Dennis? And so there's a lot of extra work for those guys as well. And so, we're trying our best, but obviously we have fallen short in a few places, and we're going to continue to try to do better. And so appreciate the comments, and we'll keep trying.
Well, Karen's still here, and she missed a couple while we were administrating the whole project, so it's just human. Real quick, just so everyone has the full information, because it was mentioned how ironic it is, the different relationships. Baker was brought in, and the attorney brought in, and a third party did look into it at the time they were brought on. That was Stinson. So just so everyone has all the information, there was a conflict check at that time, and we can question that. That's fine, but there was one done. Also, to the question to Mr. Nelson about is he going to vote to renew the contract, I would be on you personally to vote no if I believe that if you had raised any specific concerns about employees as far as performance. We've talked a ton about optics, and the optics of a jail being late in and of itself is bad. And the optics of it being so expensive is bad. There's no way around the optics, and some of them were self-inflicted. I think we all agree. There's certain things they could have done, or other parties could have done differently. But if there's anyone that, in kind of thinking and looking at all this and how we're going to discuss it tonight and other nights, so just go back and look at the history. I don't think I've ever seen the sheriff publicly criticize Baker Group's performance on the jail site. And if he would have communicated any criticisms to me privately, I would probably be pushing for someone to make them public, because that's what I do. I push the LEC authority to make things public. They didn't want to make public. And I would tell Mark, just so you know, if you don't say it publicly, there's a concern here. And I'd apologize, to the sheriff if he didn't want me to tell you, but this is a big deal. And we're talking a lot, I'm bringing this up because we're talking about relationships a lot. Let's have all the context here. If there was any two people that had that it would be common sense, reasonable suspicion to think that they don't owe anything to each other, it would be Chad Sheehan and Todd Wick. They work together on the project right now, and they were primary election opponents. So if there's any two parties that don't owe each other anything, so to speak, it would be those two. And the opportunities are rife for any sort of criticism. So that's why I asked if there was any issues. That's why I paid attention to any public statements. That's why if there was anything privately conveyed to anybody, I would come back to you, Mr. Nelson, and say, as the board's representative, this is an issue, and I'll bring it up if you don't. But you've even said you've received comments that the competency level is good, has even changed for the better. So it doesn't excuse any optics, but this is about building this facility and the competency of everyone involved. And we have what we have to work with. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Can I just make one comment? So just to make sure that the record's clear, there was a conflict, and the Baker Group's attorney noted so with the LAC Authority. That conflict was waived by the LAC Authority on August 24th of 2023. That doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It's not illegal to do. It's just to say, this is a conflict of interest. I represent the Baker Group, okay, is what the attorney said, and I need you to waive that conflict. That was not publicly available because it was marked confidential. Since we've asked that question, the attorney, Jody Frederickson, has said that can be made available publicly, and it has been. So just so we are clear on that there was, but it's been waived. And my only question was, at the end of the day, are you looking to increase that cost of $23,000 to $37,000 or whatever it is? And if so, that's fine. And if that's still in the decision-making process, that's fine too.
I believe that Baker Group is going to ask for $34,000.
Or 34. Yeah.
For November, and I would be supportive of that because it is below the average rate that we've been paying them. And I would say under the guise of mitigating damages, that looks very good on our part, that we're paying them a lower fee than what we've paid for other months during the project.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And by having a month-to-month contract, rather, because we could have done we could do a 4-month, 5-month, 6-month. I think by doing it month-to-month also shows that we're trying to mitigate damages by saying, no, we're only going to pay you until as this project gets done. We're not going to lock ourselves into 6 months. The project takes 3, and we're still out the other 3 months. So I believe through those two things, we're trying to mitigate damages as best we can.
Any other comments, questions? I think it's clear at this point, at least for the next month. Dennis, anything you have to add? Okay. All right, moving on. Item 11 from the Board of Supervisors for action. This is from Mr. Taylor, Mr. Radig. This is approval of hiring of outside legal counsel, authorizing the chairman to sign letter of engagement with Whitfield and Eddy Law, and specifically John A. Templer, Jr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So as we've been talking tonight about the Board of Supervisors and our standing, the lost revenue, the delay of nearly 7 months, we've been asking questions since late August of the county attorney's office, understanding that they're very busy and tied up with prosecutorial diligence. So we have been asking for help. They have recommended outside legal counsel be retained. We are understanding that Jody McDougall of Frederickson Byron, PA, who is counsel for the Baker Group and the LAC Authority, has suggested, given some of our public discussions, that it may not be advisable or would not be advisable to take us on concurrently as well as had been suggested. So we're hoping for representation in closed sessions that works cooperatively with the authority's attorney to make sure taxpayer interest is really at the forefront. Questions on standing, the beneficiaries, the process, independent reviews, beyond sort of what we have kind of anecdotally heard or said. And John Templer, we included his resume, I think gives us the best chance on a factual basis, has the expertise in similar situations, and it makes the most sense. He's often called upon for his expertise in insurance law as pertains to construction projects. He's preeminent in construction law, according to Chambers USA. One of the things, if you look, he's an expert arbitrator and mediator with alternative dispute resolution. So he's worked with the LEC authorities attorney in the past, but would uniquely represent the county. In fact, he's chaired the American Arbitrators Association as one of the original members of the Construction Law Council for the bar. He's worked in municipalities or for them. And then just two notable things. One is publicly, whether it's Polk County and Dubuque, the lead counsel for large public owners, including parking ramp construction, industrial excavation. But then on the private side, he's been co-counsel for multi-party, multi-million-dollar arbitration, including the Louisiana Superdome, which he successfully won that case, named Des Moines Area's Lawyer of the Year, 2013, 2021, for construction law, and top ranked for the last 20 years in construction law. So Joshua had asked if there was any potential reduction in rate. His rate reduction would be from $525 to $450, and then go up slightly, $460 after the first of the year. But I think he's uniquely positioned to help us out in this matter. Supervisor Raddick?
So, after, what was it, last week, or James, asked us to maybe delay it, and Jeremy asked what I thought, and I pushed to have it on this week. And personally, I'd like us to move forward, and I want it to be this guy. I really don't care if it's a 5-0 vote, because I think it's the right choice. I think when I look at the county's financial exposure on this project and where we could be in 4 or 5 months, we really cannot afford to not have the best possible attorney moving forward with this. I really think that we should have an attorney that represents the county for our closed sessions, and I'm, again, no insults to you or your boss. I think you guys do a great job. So, but you also do a lot more work that is not the LEC, and it's not your 100% 9 to 5 main focus. And I do think we need an attorney. I would like to have it for the meeting in our next closed session. I think that would help me to want to be there. I do have a problem, we've already brought it up, the conflict side. If we had the same attorney as Baker Group and the LEC, I just think that just adds more fuel to the fire of, conflicts of interest and a buddy system. I just don't think that's the way we should go. I think we need to go with John Templer. You look at his resume, you look at what he's done, he's discounted the fee for us. I think he would be the right choice. But again, I can't reiterate how important it is to have, on a project of this size and scope, the best attorney you can get. It's not a $3 million project. It's not a $1.5 million project. You're talking almost $70 million by the time you go through every change order and every other little bill that was along the way, including the road. There's a lot of moving pieces. Do I want to have an attorney? Do I want to have to go through a legal process of some kind? No. But we don't want to be stuck without the right guy either. Ideally, in my ideal world, we have some kind of negotiations between the LEC and their attorney, and those that are at fault, they pay the bill, and we get the thing open, we move in, and nothing else has to happen. That's what I want to see happen. But there's a really high potential chance that that does not happen. And we need to be prepared. And I do want somebody that's there in a closed session to keep accountability that we're on the right discussion, right track. Because if you have the wrong discussion in a closed session, that can become a legal problem for elected officials. And I don't want to see any one of us on this board or in the LEC get into trouble for trying to have conversations that you can't legally have in a closed session. So, and I know you guys have always been very adamant about, interfering or, stopping anything, any discussion that shouldn't be had, but at the same time, there's different parties in the room, and I think I would want one specifically that is our hire. So if you guys aren't willing to do it today, that's fine, but I would like to do it today. I pushed Jeremy to put it on the agenda today. And I guess I'd like to hear anybody else's thoughts.
I just have a question, I guess, since you put this on as well, Mr. Radigan, you mentioned concern about the joint closed sessions. Is that concern shared by anyone else on the board? Is that a concern you have, Mr. Taylor? Not saying you have to commit to going or not going if there's a joint closed session next week, but is that a shared concern?
I think it is for me, but I may have a little bit of a different take. I'd like to be there because I don't want to not have that information. And so even though it may not be the way that I want it to play out, I would rather be there than not and get as much information as I can, especially as people are wondering how much information we have or don't have. Where I have more heartburn is who represents the county versus the authority. And I know in a perfect world, it's, hey, everybody's on the same team. And generally I think that that's the case. But there's even been questions like, who has the proper standing? Could they negotiate on behalf of the county? Is that in writing? And all of these things where I don't want to necessarily rely on the advice of somebody that may have multiple interests rather than merely our own, if that makes any sense.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you've mentioned in the past concerns about how the closed sessions are conducted. I believe. Is there any context to that, or is it mostly about the parties or the leadership or the fact that they're together? And that's really for either of you.
Are you asking me, Yerke?
I'll answer first because it's clear in my head right now because of the question. I do believe that if we're having a closed session and it's joint between the county and the authority, the county and the authority are the clear leaders of that meeting, that any interaction from any contractor in the room is merely as a guest to say their piece, and when their piece is said, they're no longer in the meeting. Because that's typically what you're gonna get from an expert witness, and they shouldn't be privy to necessarily everything. And, unless you guys all disagree with me on that, but I just never seen it, and I don't think it's normal or right.
Specifically on this law firm, you've mentioned the connections as far as, maybe it's not a connection, it's a collaborative, history with Jody and her firm as far as being on the same or opposite sides of an issue. Does that familiarity bring you any pause? Because I just bring it up because, some people have talked to me about, well, anyone that's in any way connected to Baker or that law firm, don't even give them the time of day. But you obviously are okay with some sort of familiarity there. So can you elaborate on, how your calculus, how your thought process is there?
So I would say the difference is, if the concern is this too close? And I don't want this to be, I don't want to keep beating the dead horse. The LEC authority essentially hired the Baker Group's attorney, right? This is a separate law firm that has worked on, my understanding, has worked cooperatively, has been on the same side, has been on perhaps different sides, but there's a respected relationship. And I think, Joshua, you can correct me if this is wrong, but she was asked, and by she, I mean Jody, McDougal was asked for 3 recommendations, and I believe that this was one. If that's incorrect, I stand to be corrected. But when I asked a construction attorney in Des Moines who's in private practice, he mentioned that 2 of the top 3 or 5 in the state, and he mentioned Jody as being very respected, and mentioned John Templer. I didn't know John Templer from anybody, but I thought at least having that professional, collegial relationship is a good basis. So I don't think there's any, they ran a conflicts check, which they do across 70 different or more entities, including Woodbury County and us as supervisors, and nothing was flagged for them. So I don't think there's any closeness in terms of a conflict. I don't think there's any adversarialness. I think it's merely that they have had a working relationship. And I think that that bodes well, so.
And, you know, I'm not going to use any words like collegial or whatever you just said. No, they work for different firms. Frederickson and Byron versus Whitfield and Eddy, and so have they worked together on different projects or cases? I'm sure in the past. I'm sure they've worked across from each other in the past because they're 2 larger firms from the same area. So.
Do you two have any more introductory comments before I open it up to the others?
No, just said in your backup material, and I know you're all, you can read this, the scope of what's proposed, and just for your situational awareness too, we did have conversation of about 60 to 90 minutes in total, just to get Mr. Templer up to speed on some of the things, and I was appreciative. Supervisor Nelson, so full disclosure, joined me for the call, and I believe did so, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark, but to make sure that everything was accurately conveyed, to keep me as an honest broker in characterizing the different players in this, facts, especially from an LEC authority standpoint, and I believe it was a good call, in which we just spoke about these are some of the issues, and he had some good questions and went from there.
And I also want to clarify that we did not include me on that call.
Correct.
Thank you. Did you have any communication, Mr. Radig?
I did not communicate with him. I just went through news articles and through his website just to dig into him and see what I could find on the internet.
Okay. So the scope of work mentioned in the engagement letter is based on conversations with you, Mr. Taylor?
Correct.
All right, anything else from you two before? All right. Mr. Bidinger, Mr. Nelson?
I'll just be brief here because my voice is only allowed so much. John spoke very highly of Jody. They've worked with each other a lot. They've worked against each other a few times. I don't believe that there would be any issue with the 2 of them being able to work together for what's best for Woodbury County and what's best for the LEC. I guess just trying to have my cake and eat it too. You know, one thing I don't personally like about Jody is that she's in Des Moines. I really like to have face-to-face conversations, and we simply cannot afford to pay her to drive to Woodbury County all the time for our meetings. And so she's always been very accessible via phone or Zoom or email, whatever. But I wouldn't look for a face-to-face meeting anytime soon. And with John, it would be the same, which I think having one attorney in a joint closed session on Zoom is bad enough, let alone if it was 2. So not that we can find anybody that would be closer potentially that could be in person at those meetings, but that would be something on my wish list. You know, maybe somebody that could come to a Board of Supervisors meeting if we asked them to and not cost an arm and a leg to do it. Obviously, he's got an impeccable resume, all kinds of accolades. He would do the job. We can have discussion on the rate. I don't know why I thought Jody at Frederickson Brown, got 460, but she's at 415 is what the LEC is paying her. But you kind of also get what you pay for. So those are my thoughts. I would ask Joshua, I guess my one question would be to Joshua down there, if you guys have vetted or looked at any attorneys or contacted any attorneys in the past week. I know that James obviously couldn't be here tonight because he's busy and you guys had a busy weekend on top of it, but I just didn't know if you had found anything or if you were still wanting to come in 2 weeks with something. That'd be my question for you.
Right, so as you indicated, yeah, it has been busy on the criminal side, and James is in a murder trial this week. We have started that process that the board requested last week as far as contacting a couple of attorneys and received the names of some referrals. We're not in a position tonight to make a recommendation on any specific attorney, but I think that James and I talked yesterday. He would feel that he could at least have that conversation with the board next week as far as kind of the findings of, we may not say, hey, this is the person to go to, but have more information to assist the board in that regard. But yeah, given everything that's happening on the criminal side right now and some additional conversations that need to be had with the potential firms or attorneys out there, tonight we're not in a position to make that recommendation.
All right. So my thoughts, I won't belabor them. I'll just bullet point and simple. I would still like to wait. I'd like to hear recommendations from Josh and James on what they recommend. I understand the urgency to some degree, but I also think we need to make sure we don't rush the process. My third concern is overall as being, as a freshman supervisor, it's just the process of how we engage outside legal counsel. My own personal thoughts are that we should always go through the chairman. Not that, Supervisor Taylor, you would do anything, ad hoc or on the own. I know, we all get, what's the word? We all want to see some things get done, and we can run and begin to engage things. I just would like to see the better process of going through the chairman with our attorney's office, engaging or talking to an outside counsel, then bringing back a letter of recommendation or engagement, and then the board together directing our inquiry, our scope of inquiry. So not to say that anything is outside maybe the bounds of what we'd probably come to ultimately, but that's just my concern, is just the rush to some degree. I would like to wait, put this on the table, lay this on the table, this motion, and wait at least to hear next week from Joshua and James and what they recommend. Not saying we might still all be funneled down to the same recommendation and belief, but I would like to hear that. And just going forward, just try to really go through the chair, whoever the chair is next year or in any situation. I would prefer that, just to go through the chair and the county attorney's office procedural wise. So that's my thoughts. Yeah, I don't doubt yet. Mr. Templer's, his resume looks very impressive, very thorough, he knows his stuff. It looks like he's, be able to handle what we need. But I'd like to see, to slow down. I agree with Mark. If we have somebody local, I know that may not be the popular option. I agree with Supervisor Raddick. You want the best of the best, but also face-to-face would be nice. No travel fees, face-to-face, someone that's here potentially, or someone that's around us closer that that knows the situation or is a little closer to us would be nice, but then again, that may not be possible. So that's my thoughts, Chairman.
I want to address two things. Sure. Because I don't want to take notes and have to do them all at once, but on the travel with the attorneys, the authority already spent $34.71 on travel expenses overall. It might be worth to pay them to show up every now and then. We're not talking about small settlements or cases here. It's important, and I think if they're, considering it, they could drive to our meeting. The other thing, you know, I wouldn't say we're moving quick necessarily. To me, I feel like we're moving slow, because Jeremy voiced the concern August 29th when we got this report. I agreed with him on that day too. I mean, I didn't publicly say I agree with Jeremy, let's do this right now. But I can't say that, you know, the process of looking at that didn't start then. And of course, at first, we were looking at using the LEC's attorney as well, until, you know, it was also found that they were Baker's attorney, and it just didn't, to me, the optics of that doesn't look good if the county, the authority, and Baker all have the same attorney.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Keith. And just so you know, this has been about that 10 weeks, and I think I've contacted Joshua, you can correct me if I'm wrong, at least 8 or 9 times on different specific questions. And typically, they've been, you know, we're not prepared to answer that necessarily. I would also say, I agree, I would rather have face-to-face, but if you think about who did we engage on the pipelines? Timothy Whipple from Des Moines and Allers. Who did we engage in bonding? Jason Kaminsky from Allers. Who did the LAC Authority engage? Jody Frederickson from Des Moines, and before that, Stinson from Kansas City. So my opinion, I agree if that person was local, but I do want to make sure that we have the best. The other question I had, Joshua, was do you anticipate that that recommendation will be one person, or do you anticipate that of the 3 that have been put forward, it'll be, you know, the board could go with any one of these 3, here are the pros and cons, or this is the one? Or do you know that?
I'm not sure what Mr. Loomis would do on that. I think historically, we have helped facilitate engaging outside counsel, but ultimately it is a board decision. So I don't think that the county attorney's office has typically made a formal recommendation as far as a particular attorney. Other than we had an RFP process to move to the Heidman Law Firm a few years back, and we were represented on that committee, but I'm not sure that whether it would be a specific recommendation or just here's the information that we gathered about these particular attorneys. The other thing is that, you know, ultimately who to hire as an attorney for the potential litigation does potentially delve into strategy type matters, and it's something that would be open to discussion in closed session if the board wanted to do that. And I think that some of the, you know, more specific issues related to exactly what's going on with the project and how that might affect going with one attorney or another could be delved into more in a closed session. So I'd put that out there that that's a possibility if the board would desire to discuss that further in closed session.
And I agree with that statement. That might be something we should look at. And in the past, the board typically has not asked the attorney's opinion, at least in the 6 years I've been on here, when necessarily hiring their attorneys. So, I mean, we've always asked for any consent or any kind of involvement in a selection committee when we've had one, but typically that's not been the case. I do also want to, Dan, you brought something else up about necessarily just, can one board member just call up the attorney once he's hired and sit there and request, you know, answers to all these questions? I don't think that should be a process we use. I think we should go into a closed session and come up with the questions we're looking to ask our attorney, and as a majority of the board, you know, pursue those. Would that make more sense to you there, Joshua, as far as a procedure for what we're going to hire the attorney to do?
Well, obviously there's 5 board members, but the client is Woodbury County. and there needs to be a consensus on what are the issues that we want the attorney to delve into. I mean, obviously, there's the overarching goal of getting the project done and recovering any damages due to the county or other parties. But other specific issues, yeah, those would typically be sorted out in closed session. You know, the purpose of closed session is strategy with counsel for the potential litigation, and that is an appropriate place to do that.
So does that make sense?
Yes, it does, yeah.
Okay.
And let me clarify a few things. The one reason, let me just clarify rush. There's rush that has urgency, and there's rush that's reckless. And I want to make sure, no, I don't think anybody's recklessly rushing through. But just there's a real fine line about to urgency into the reckless realm. And that's what I'm just learning. When just, I'm not saying anyone has done reckless anything, it's just the rush of urgency. Secondly, the flippantly asked, why I said that is, I know some of us asked for the recommendation from the board, and I agree with you, Supervisor Raddick. We're not legally bound from the county attorney's office to take the recommendation, but we did ask, and I don't want to perceive to them that we make flippant requests and don't give them time to respond. I think that's just not right. And just like with any one of us, or if I'd ask any one of you for something, I don't want to flippantly make a decision once I've already asked you for some information. And that's just something I asked James of that. I want to just honor that. And I know he's busy and we can't control what has come up, in this last week. But that's just for clarification with that. But yeah.
If I could piggyback on that, it's kind of ironic that Dan and I had this agenda item to talk about the expenditures for that FOIA request. That attorney was one that we hired without any recommendation. And I know we were kind of under the gun, but we've had a lot of members of the public not very happy with how that process went. And thankfully, we didn't end up spending a lot of the money. But whoever we end up hiring to represent us on this jail project is going to be for probably an extensive amount of time. And I think that I'm willing to admit that I could have done more due diligence back in August with that attorney on the FOIA request, and I would be willing to admit that I can learn from those mistakes. And I agree with Dan that we did ask the county's attorney's office this time around, which I believe was learning from our prior mistakes, to give us an opinion. They said they needed 2 weeks. It's been 1 week, and so I think it would be appropriate to wait. And John could be the single recommendation that they make. That could very well be, but at least it came from them. I believe James was elected for a reason. We've asked for his help, and I think it would be appropriate to see what he has to say.
On the FOIA request, though, the attorney was recommended by the auditor, and the attorney was here and did also say, yes, I approve of using this as the choice. So there was the question asked of the attorney in the board open session.
Are you talking about question of Joshua?
No, James Loomis was here.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's kind of splitting hairs to say we don't have a habit of relying on the county attorney to recommend. I mean, we rely on them to craft the RFP, and I'm sure we all call with, insight and requests for their opinion on certain options. So I think they are integrally involved no matter what. Do you have something else?
Yeah, I just want to say, on this one, I think it's really, really important. I want to measure twice and cut once. And I also, I don't want to try to have a vote tonight that's, not going to ultimately, I want to respect. And, we try to work with consensus and what the majority believes and what I'm hearing, unless Supervisor Ong comes up with the Halloween surprise right now.
I'm just waiting for my turn.
Okay.
So.
Well, I don't want to, unnecessarily barrel down this road. If it was, hey, we need another couple months, I think I'd have a lot more heartburn. If it's, we need another week, I want to also respect that and respect that's the give and take of being on a board rather than being individually elected in an office to be the sole arbiter of anything. So if that's where everybody's at tonight, I do respect that. And I will just give one accolade to the county attorney's office. Joshua asked the question, we're a governmental entity, there's insurance, defense, costs, and rates. Has anybody asked if there's a reduced rate? Well, the answer was yes, by $75. I'm in the wrong profession, but that reduction right there, even if it is, I wouldn't have probably asked that on my own. So that's the reason this process works, I think, and that's all I have.
Well, yes, Mr. Taylor, you did bring up the original request, and of course, I requested long ago I told the board I was making that request for joint representation at the time. The timeline is it's a valid point. The waiting is real. I will say it's just part of the process, unfortunately. Part of it's obviously due to Jody's firm, and if I was in her position, I would be looking at our board meetings and asking myself if I want to represent a county that, has certain things to say about me. And then from Mr. Loomis's perspective, I think he's in 3 back-to-back murder trials right now, so it's, as we mentioned earlier, a perfect storm of everything as far as waiting goes. But I don't like the fact that this is on the agenda. I could have pulled it or made it information, but I didn't want to deal with the headache politically of that. But I don't think it's a good thing. I think personally, if you were talked into having it on tonight, Mr. Taylor, by Mr. Radig, you should have resisted, and it would have been helpful to the whole process. One reason is because now we have publicly lauded Mr. Templer, and now we're talking about doing what we should have done at the beginning and gone to closed session in coordination with the county attorney's office and found out some recommendations and come to the board with a unified option. Now we have, someone that I would say has an unfair advantage on top of the fact that they look very qualified. Here, I'm doing it again. I'm complimenting them. This is what we don't want to happen when we're casting the net to find the most qualified person no matter where they live, since I am also okay with finding someone from out of town. But I realize your point, Mr. Nelson, as well. So again, I think it sends the wrong message, and we've talked about the optics of the Baker Group hiring. That was a decision they made, but the poor guy is being brought up every meeting. Bad optics. I also think this is bad optics. I think that, look at the timeline here. On the 17th, which is the date of the engagement letter, Mr. Templer offers his services to Mr. Taylor based on their discussions about the scope. So an engagement letter has been provided on the 17th. On the same day, Mr. Radig says the LEC authority attorney has an extreme conflict and makes the misstatement about the change order, which is water under the bridge right now. But then, surprise, surprise, the next day, the LEC authority attorney declines to represent Woodbury County. Why would you represent Woodbury County if the board is publicly saying that hiring you was a mistake? So there's a little editorializing, I think, with it just kind of naturally progressed this way. They saw that there was different issues. I can't speak to why it drew out for so long. Maybe they were just looking at all the claims that who was going to be claimed for what, and it wasn't a priority. And then they saw board meetings where we called into question their hiring and some of their stances. So obviously, that firm is not going to represent Woodbury County. That's common sense. That's not anything that's written in the agenda item, although that may be part of it. And then on the 24th, last Tuesday, County Attorney Loomis says he's, quote, looking at a couple different recommendations. That means there's more than one. So again, if we're going to have resumes on the agenda packet, let's have at least 2 and at least give the appearance of looking at, different engagement letters, even if we have to, again, wait. I know this one was timely in providing it, so that's to their credit. But there's more than 2 law firms, there's more than, there's more than the 3 that was put forward, I don't want to say recommended, but put forward by the LAC Authority's attorney. There may be some the county attorney, when they have time, find out. But in fairness to the county attorney's office, they weren't actively looking for other firms, I believe, until the board gives them a signal that this is, or the other attorney says they're not going to represent us, until there's a concrete signal that it's not going to happen. Otherwise, it's just wasted work. So on the 24th, they're looking at other options. 3 of us right here, me, Mr. Taylor, or me, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Bittinger, say we would like the county attorney's office to make a recommendation. And I understand the waiting is hard, but this is a big project, and sometimes good things take way too much time. But then a couple hours after that meeting ends is when Mr. Taylor, you send me the agenda item to hire Mr. Templer with a date of October 17th. That looks terrible. I don't see how we can ask the county attorney's office to give us a recommendation, 2 hours later, put something on the agenda for action, not give time for other firms to be considered, not go the route of a closed session, so that if we do end up hiring Mr. Templer, I don't know if it's really what we would have arrived at, given the advantage of discussing how great they are for this whole meeting, but I don't know if it's I don't know if the net was cast wide enough. I don't know if the scope is what the board is going to desire. And I could say that if Mr. Bittinger went and called out an attorney, Mr. Nelson called a different attorney, I call a different attorney, we're all going to tell them slightly different things about what they want, what we want them to do. But the caution I have for this is, can I in good conscience bring in an attorney that I know is going to represent a divided board on, before we have a closed session discussion perhaps about what the scope is? Because one of these items is, the maintenance fund, the propriety of, examining the propriety of maintenance fees. What if 2 or maybe even 3 of the supervisors don't want that considered? I'm going to sign a letter today that says that's what they're going to look into. I don't think that's right. This is not a firm that is being hired to provide defense to the county, where we can have all sorts of disagreements, but we're all on the same page as far as minimizing liability to the county. Generally, the only disagreements are, do we settle for this much, not settle for that much? This is, for lack of a better term, an offensive move. We are investigating, we are looking into things, we're asking questions that we're not satisfied with current answers. And so what happens when you have an attorney that's been provided a scope, the board signs the scope, we go into closed session, the board says that's not the scope we want. I don't think that's fair to the entire process when we haven't even narrowed down what the board is going to support our own attorney to do.
To clarify on that, I think some of the scope was potential scope, because anything we would have to, go forward with the attorney on would require a closed session and unification of the board on the issues. I think ideally those were more examples, because Jeremy and I don't necessarily agree on everything and how it was worded on that, so.
Of course.
But, in our bylaws, it requires week 1, we put it on as an information item. Unless you're willing to put it on as an action item, then we follow it up the following week as an action item. So I think the process, in my opinion, was more that. I mean, it was started, not today, but it was started last week as an information item, and then this week it's on as action. It was asked, and it may have been Dan that asked it, for the attorney's recommendations, and I do, respect your position that, hey, I asked him this, I expect to, actually allow him to answer it for me, and I get that, that's respectful. It's just, personally, I didn't really feel like I needed the recommendation, and I feel like I like the guy that we have dug into, so That's why I wanted it on. I wanted to move forward with it. There's a lot of critical mass stuff coming up here pretty soon. We're supposed to be starting our budget for our next year, and I don't even know how we can budget when we have no clue where our reserves are going to be. Are we going to wipe out our reserves this year because we don't have any revenue? I mean, there's some very serious things going on. So to me, it's peace of mind having this hired and moving on. But if the board as a whole is not willing to do that, and you want to go into closed session next week with a recommendation from the attorney, I'm absolutely fine with that if that's the board's decision.
Just to add on, I don't think 2 days is enough time to give the county attorney's office to recommend a law firm. We're talking Tuesday to agenda submission on Thursday ideally, and that's just.
Didn't he say 2
Didn't
weeks?
Yeah, he just
A
said,
week ago?
that he said 2 weeks and he just said Tuesday. I mean, I guess my frustration a little bit is this has been 2.5 months. And there are deadlines that may be being missed right now. And I'm serious about that. There may be parties put on notification that we've missed for 2.5 months. Such basic 101 questions, like what happens when you exceed the bond authority? Can they have an injunction on the opening of this? Can't answer that question. What about this party? Is there anything other than anecdotal, circumspect, sort of, well, I heard that this person was doing this. What about the questions of, levying for future boards? These are questions I have of the county attorney's office that are not answered. And I've been asking on a nearly weekly basis. And it's no fault of the county attorneys. I get, but as an individual supervisor, they're too big of questions. And so what do you do in your individual capacity? I realize there's been a disagreement on the board whether or not to have that council be joint between the LAC Authority, the Baker Group, and Woodbury County. But at this point, just trying to, however it is, if we're not going to move next Tuesday as the county attorney's office has suggested, I'm not sure why not, because that's what they've said that they can do. I just want to make sure we're not missing deadlines for taxpayers.
Just to clarify my unclear clarification, when I said 2 days, I meant from the prior week, that I don't think it's fair when we say Jody's not going to represent us. 2 days later, he's going to have a recommendation. That's what I meant.
Gotcha. All right.
And I guess, like I said, I don't agree with every question Jeremy has on the list, like the one you just posed, what happens if you exceed the bonding authority? Because I feel like I've dug into it and we're paying with different sources. It's not bonding, therefore it's safe. But if we have that legal opinion that was paid for, rendered right there, while I feel like I'm right, that I've read the code right, that other attorneys have told me I'm right, this is a unique case, and it helps to make us, it shows that we've done the due diligence. We've done the work. We've asked these questions. Again, on a legal front, we want to make sure we do everything right. I mean, I've joked about it before, but I don't want to be one of the first residents of the new jail, because something maybe wasn't done right. I want to make sure that we are getting what we paid for, and the county is the biggest investor in this project, and we need to make sure that we are being represented by the best.
I'm just still concerned by the push in the direction from board meetings as far as the scope on what are divided issues. Again, I'm worried about introducing additional conflict that doesn't exist now. When Mr. Taylor and I were dealing with the woes of the mental health region, Sioux Rivers, we certainly had legal counsel, and we certainly had meetings, and I don't think at any time we were thinking about, our questions were how do we comport favorite word at that time, comport with existing agreements and law to withdraw, but we didn't ask, how do we just get out of the 28E? How do we just not go? How do we not do what prior boards had signed us up for? I mean, the starting point of how do we, despite the lease, pay what we want? I'm not sure that's a question the whole board wants to ask. I mean, it sounds like a PR thing. It sounds like you go to the authority and you make the case publicly. When we've signed agreements, kind of past board bind a future board, can we bind ourselves? I mean, I'm just concerned about coming into disagreement, especially with, I can have my opinion, but I try to defer a little bit more on this as the chair, but I know that there's fundamental disagreements on strategy between Mr. Raddick, probably more so, and Mr. Taylor as well, and the LEC, our LEC authorities rep, Mr. Nelson. And that is not a good environment for an attorney to come in and look at these meetings and say, well, who's got the most convincing case? I'm just going to go with it's tough. So putting this on again is just another step in kind of forcing something that has taken too much time, and that's not Mr. Taylor's fault or Mr. Raddick's fault or anyone's fault, but I don't think it's helpful, and I don't want it to tarnish, especially if this is the best option. I don't want it to be tarnished by the fact that it's on today and likely won't proceed to a vote or worst case, not pass.
Well, here we are, and I would move to defer, because I don't want to move to do anything otherwise, respecting where everybody's at. And for any heartburn over putting it on tonight, I would just say it's been balanced by trying to move forward this issue over the last 2.5 months. I have just legal questions that I wonder, is this legal to do or not? And then there's others that I respect are also, okay, what is the strategy of the board, and what's the majority of the board, and where do you want to go? And I can be in the minority on that. I have no issue with that. But I also want to just be able to ask, as Keith alluded to, is it legal for us to do this? And if I can't have that question answered by the county attorney's office right now, respecting all the reasons why they can't answer that, I don't feel comfortable making decisions on the scope of something so seismic. Nothing to do with even legal strategy, just can we do this or not? I mean, that's pretty important to me. And I, as much as I respect Keith, I don't want to rely on Keith to say you can or can't do this, or even my own intuition. So those are some of my reasons for kind of pushing, so to speak.
I'll second the motion by Taylor to postpone. Is the board desiring any more discussion before we hear from a citizen?
I would just like to say that within the scope of engagement, I look at some of these questions and, like question A has already been worked on or is mostly completed. Item B, that's been looked into, but it would be something that we would look into it from our side. Item C, kind of that same thing. Item D, we don't know that will even happen, and if not, we won't have that information for months yet, most likely. And item E is not pertinent at all to the completion of the project. And so when I look through that list, there's nothing that screams at me that we need to do something tonight, and so I would be in favor of deferring and waiting to see what the county attorney's office has to say. Sorry, Doyle.
Oh, you're fine. Doyle Turner, 2738 200 Street, Mobile. I guess my main question is what we're looking at here is that eventually the money that we're spending is going to be paid by other people's errors and omissions policies, correct? Has anyone looked at those errors and omissions policies?
if I can say, not that we know of, because I know that the bond is with the construction company. There is an omissions and a sort of insurance policy would be with Goldberg and with the Baker Group. And I think, if I know where you're going, there are deadlines we may be missing right now. We just don't know, but.
So here's the deal. I'm a firm believer that nobody likes surprises. And I believe Mr. Nelson said today that Baker Group or the LEC, I'm not sure which, knew about the damper problem back in June. And I'm pretty sure nobody here knew that until what, September 13th?
Excuse me, was that publicly mentioned?
Yeah, it was brought up at an LEC meeting because then they had to send the
Okay, so just to clarify, the public, our boss technically knew about it if they were attending.
The original
meetings.
timeline was Hausman had found that there was one damper missing. They brought in the Sioux City inspector. The inspector found 7. At that time, they returned the plans to Goldberg. Then Goldberg found the additional 31 to make it 38, and that's what went through kind of July and August. And then it was kind of August, I believe at the August 24th meeting was when they said that this is actually how many that were missing.
So here's the problem I have with that. While they knew that you had a potential problem that was going to set this back, I've been to board meetings where you guys were hiring more people. You were not allowed the information to mitigate damages at that point. Here's the problem. You're doing the exact same thing to those errors and omissions insurance companies. If you have not put them on notice, you're spending their money without their knowledge. You do not have the right to do that. So when we talk about rushing, I think we're a long ways down the road. My own personal feeling is I'm going to go on a limb and I'm going to tell you that more than likely your attorneys are going to say we've got 3 options and they're all 3 good options. You're not going to find people in this category that are bums. I think the time is of the essence. I think it was of the essence. I do think that you need to cease and desist spending other people's money. And what happens if you don't cease and desist doing that is you're going to get the pleasure, or the people of Woodbury County are going to get the pleasure of paying that money. So in my opinion, you need to hire an attorney weeks ago, not weeks from now. You need representation now, and you need to stop spending other people's money if you want a chance of getting paid back. So that would be my recommendation. I fully realize that it's a little unfair what's happening to the lawyer's office, but you know what? Are you looking for more work, Joshua?
Got plenty of work.
Yeah, there's no shortage of work. You've got somebody that I think everybody here can say, this is a good one. Yes, I would like to see the process be different, but I think time is of the essence. And like I've said before, you have to show that process of mitigating damages. And I think this is part of doing that, is making sure that those other insurance companies are informed and that you know what time frame you need to be on in order to do that. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for saying that better than I could.
Want to switch?
Well, again, that's the whole point. I think we're moving slow, but, to your point, I can see your perspective there too. Again, I'm not trying to poison a well. I'm just trying to pick the best. And, I looked into the other two's resumes and I have no, like you said, I wouldn't say they're bad attorneys. I don't think they're the best option. And, I like to save money. I don't want to spend more, but sometimes it's worth spending more. And on this case, with this much money on the line, with this big a project, honestly, I just think it's the right way to go, and I think we should do it now. And I think we should have a closed session next Tuesday discussing our plan moving forward and what we want the attorney to do. But as a board, if you don't choose to do that and you want to defer it to next week, I still think we should have a closed session next week determining what questions we want answered and how we move forward, because it's too important, it's too big a deal.
And I would agree. I think I think we've done that before. And I think it's helpful for the county attorney's office, if they don't have expertise in the topic, to at least weigh in and help us direct our efforts and understand. Questions like, can you ask for a discounted rate? Great for closed session before we put on the agenda that it's X amount of dollars. Let's just, try and do this right. Yes.
I'm ready unless somebody's changed their mind. I don't think Keith maybe is persuaded, so if you're ready, I thought I heard one of my kids calling for me to come trick or treat, but that was maybe Karen's phone, so.
Please remember to silence your cell phones. Okay, no amendments to unpostpone. Motion on the table is to postpone.
Do you need to clarify until next week? in the
I don't think
motion,
so. I
or
think
not
we've
just-
already signaled that
Okay.
when the county attorney is,
Okay.
if Tuesday works, that'd be great for a closed session.
Does that work?
Can you speak for James right now?
James indicated to me yesterday that he believed that he could have that discussion next Tuesday.
And then whatever motion we make in open session, is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know any reason why it couldn't go on there, on the agenda, for whoever that is.
Could I ask, would you guys like if the LEC delays our joint closed session next week? So then we could have our closed session with the attorneys and we could catch up some other time with the LEC? Because otherwise I worry that we may not have enough time to get everything done.
I didn't think about your session, or your meeting.
But
I think that'd be helpful.
okay, but I mean,
Personal.
that's fine. I just think that we won't have time to do both, and I think what we're doing here is really important. So we can easily delay it a week or 2 weeks and go from there. If that works for you guys.
And again, on the LEC's closed session, if you're not divulging a new legal path forward, or, you can't just give an informational update on the construction progress, because that's probably outside the bounds of what the closed session laws would be. It's more or less, you should be talking about the case and updates on the case, or what actions you're planning to take legally, not how is the construction going.
Yeah.
So, I guess if you don't have updates that are pertinent or, timely, that matter on that, then
I will talk with Jody, and if there's nothing pertinent that we absolutely need to have next week, we can clear that, and then we'll just have a closed session with the attorneys, with our county attorney.
That's good.
Well, appreciate the coordination. If there is anything we should know, then maybe we should be there and prefer that. I mean, information, as Mr. Taylor said, even if you disagree with the council that's there, you still need the information as much as you can get it. So I'll attend any meetings or closed sessions I can, as long as the county attorney lets me. If it's scheduled appropriately. Can everyone is everyone available at 3:30, or is 3 o'clock too early for anybody?
I'd prefer at least a 3:15 if that's possible, just because the time for getting off work and getting here.
Okay.
Same, and then if I could just ask a clarifying question. So if the board met in closed session next week with the intent to hire outside counsel, that motion could be made then in open session as long as it was so noticed. Is that your understanding, Joshua?
The motion to approve a specific attorney could be acted on
Thank
in
you.
open session, as long as it's on the agenda.
Okay, appreciate it.
And I'd just like to give an extra grace period of 1 day in case we need to republish on Monday if it takes another day to get everyone considered that we should consider, if there are several others, as long as we have it noticed in time.
Appreciate that.
All right, anything else on item 11? All right, thanks for the effort. I know you're just trying to do the right thing, and I think
Mr. Chair, we do still need a vote on that.
yes, thank you. All in favor of postponing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 12, reports on committee meetings. Anybody?
I have none, Chair.
None for me.
No.
Item 13, any citizen concerns?
So just wanted to kind of officially talk to the board. I did speak to Supervisor Taylor, called me yesterday. As you are probably aware, the sheriff's office experienced a significant incident on Sunday evening near the intersection of Old Highway 141 and Grundy Avenue. I don't want to repeat everything that was discussed in the press release yesterday. I think if you're not aware, a homicide occurred with a family member taking the life of his father, and then we had a nearly 7-hour standoff that resulted in that homicide suspect opening fire on some tactical teams, including our own tactical team. And because the officers were in fear for their life and had no other option to end that threat, returned fire and struck the suspect. The DCI was called in, and they will make a determination as to his cause of death and who would be responsible for that, and whether or not it was justified use of deadly force. But there's I want to really publicly thank the departments that responded to our call for assistance. I mentioned several of the Woodbury County departments that responded, including our communication center, Woodbury County Conservation. There was a conservation officer that I was with at times during the very initial part, and I was thankful to see him there. The county attorney's office, Mr. Loomis, was assisting, woke up in the middle of the night and assisting us in writing search warrants and other items of legal matters that we needed. The EOC, emergency management. But then I also want to make sure that I really publicly thank the Sioux City Police Department, who sent their armored personnel vehicle along with their tactical team. The Iowa State Patrol sent their armored personnel Bearcat, which is a smaller version of what the Sioux City Police Department has, and several of their SWAT team members as well. And then the Tri-County CERT team, which is made up of Sioux, Plymouth, and Cherokee County deputies, along with Lamar's Police Department and the Cherokee Police Department. But they also sent their Bearcat, an armored personnel vehicle. There were other people that were there throughout the process. ATF, the Division of Criminal Investigations came in later. The Sloan Ambulance and their staff waited for hours on standby. Hornick Fire and Ambulance, and then Wings Air Care was put on standby to assist. Mercy was put on a trauma alert at one point, just in case there was anybody that was injured and needed to be saved. But and I mentioned this to the media yesterday, and I just want to make sure that this is not underscored. If it was not for the assistance that we received yesterday, or Sunday evening into Monday morning, and I don't say this lightly, we would be planning funerals for our deputies. And not just one or two, probably 3 or 4 or more. Had they went into this situation, and I don't want to, there's certain things I don't want to say yet, they would have been overwhelmed, and they would have walked into a situation that there's probably very little chance that they would have survived because of the way it was set up and the circumstances. And so they have requested for years that we have this Bearcat capabilities for in our SWAT team. I think for years we have held them at bay, and some of it is that you hope, like the reality is you're never going to need it. Like, right, this is just the thing that we have, but we're not going to need it. And we found out Sunday night that we need it. And this is not I know this isn't on the agenda. I'm just, and I'll speak privately with each one of you about some of the details that I've learned about the investigation, but they were under heavy, large amounts of fire from a person who was very well equipped and and knew what they were doing. And so I think in the coming weeks, I just want you to be prepared that we, the chief and I, and the chief specifically, is going to put a lot of thought into figuring out what it is that we think we need. I have received dozens of text messages and emails from citizens and people reaching out to, compliment the deputies and all the officers. If you were able to listen to the radio traffic once we gave the go-ahead, every time they would broadcast their radio from inside these armored personnel vehicles, it sounded like, if you've ever been in your car and you were in the middle of a hailstorm, that's what it sounded like. And to sit there and not be able to do anything, I'm a mile away in a mobile command bus and hear what was going on. One of our deputies who was on the perimeter, who's a combat vet, said that it sounded like he was back in Baghdad. That's what it sounded like. And so we are going to do everything we can to try and utilize whatever sources of income that we can or revenue to try and purchase one of these vehicles. But at some point in the next several weeks, I will have this as an agenda item, and hopefully we're going to take input from private citizens if they want to make donations, other resources that we can find. It was very alarming, to say the least, for me particularly. I don't want to speak for the chief, but for me, to know what those guys were going through in the moment, and to know what would have happened had we just gone in there like normally we might have, behind a squad car or something like that, it would have been fatal, and not probably much you could have done. You would have just been at a tactical advantage, overpowered, outgunned. It would have been disastrous. So just telling you that to let you know, let the public know. Again, I know we've just talked about all kinds of money and everything, but we're going to do everything within our power to try and get that accomplished as soon as possible, because the last thing that I think any law enforcement leader wants to do is have to go to somebody's family member and tell them, I'm sorry, but they're not coming home tonight. And so I think that's about as close as I've ever felt that this situation, I wasn't sure was going to, once it really started, for about 5 or 10 minutes, I wasn't sure what the outcome was going to be. And it was very, very, very unnerving. I'm glad that it is, by the grace of God, that it ended up the way that it did. But it could have been much different. I just want to make sure that if or when, and I think we can all look at what we see around the country and the news happening every day. Unfortunately, this is not going to be the last one. I mean, I think we all know that. And so that's really kind of bring you up to speed on what happened, and then to let you know that that'll be coming down the road. I'll certainly, if any of you want to reach out to me tomorrow, I may be able to discuss some other things privately as supervisors and let you know. But we'll be bringing that forward. Anything, Chief?
Yeah, this is my failure. They've been after for a while for this, and I'm allocating money where we think we need the money. And sheriff is the one that makes the decision. I was the one that gave the command to proceed. And then you go outside and you're a mile away and you hear what sounds like a tank, which is Sioux City's MRAP, revving up. And then all you hear are gunshots, and you don't know whether your men are safe or not. And I don't want to go through that. I've watched the video inside the armored vehicles. They're safe in there. They're safe. And that's what I want to do for our men, is get them the tools that they need. I will have a Bearcat. I will sacrifice parts of the budget because I'm not going to know we need this and not have it. So I'm asking for help, the sheriff, but I'm going to be asking a lot of people for help because the world's not getting any nicer. And I thank God we had the other agencies there that were willing to bring their armor, because it had been a terrible ass week to have to bury 5, 6, 7 people, because that's what would have happened.
Did we have any county vehicles damaged? I don't know if you can speak to that. I think I heard you on the radio, and there's a question about some vehicles being towed.
Yeah, we did not. The vehicle that was towed was the Sioux City Police Department's that took some rounds to I believe the radiator and and tires. They were hit. We don't know how many times the State Patrol. So for clarification, Sioux City Police Department MRAP had the Sioux City Police Department SWAT team inside their MRAP. The State Patrol's Bearcat had, I think, 3 members of the State Patrol SWAT team in it. It's their machine, they're operating it. And then our SWAT team members inside of that. And it took the brunt of the gunfire. And I'll just say it's a significant amount of rounds were fired in this incident. And I know the numbers. I'm not at liberty to say them currently. I was shocked.
So just quick Google of that. It's about a $350,000 vehicle, correct?
Yep.
That's on the high end, Keith, but yeah,
Okay.
I'm thinking
There-
around 300 we could.
With different bells and whistles, there's different things you can have. We're looking at, we were kind of budgeting in our mind somewhere around 300,000.
Again, just for the record, not deliberating, asking questions, answering questions. We're not voting on anything. Have you reached out to, like, say, a MERD or a Simcoe or anybody that?
Nothing yet,
Okay.
and we will be doing all of those things. We're gonna seek out every type of grant we can apply for, any type of private funding, if there's endowments out there that, give, we're gonna be, I'm not saying we're gonna come and ask you guys for $300,000. Hopefully we could not ask for any other public monies. But it's going to be on the agenda at some point, and we're gonna get this across the finish line because we have to.
And don't take this the wrong way, but I know this is the kind of thing people in the public love to support, when it comes to financially supporting something in government. So, there is that opportunity there. I do want to explicitly thank all those involved. And, some might question, so why do you need this when we do have these other agencies that can come and help us out? I think one thing that, we could maybe answer is, what if something like this happens, over in Ida County or Cherokee or somewhere right on the border, Woodbury County, Sioux City Police Department's not going to be able to make it out there. Maybe this is something where Woodbury County could show up and help save lives too.
Right. And, I was thinking about this, and I got to be cautious how I word this. Not to, like, we're the largest county. We're the largest sheriff's office in the area. And for a lot of things, other agencies are looking to us. And in this particular case, we were looking to the smaller, tri-county CERT team. It doesn't make us better. Please hear me. I'm not saying better, but bigger, right? And typically bigger means more resources. And in this particular case, we didn't. We didn't have it. And so I think, the question for me is, okay, well, maybe the next time they're going to be like, I don't know. Like, are we going to stay home? I don't think so. I think in law enforcement, when the call goes out, it goes out. But what if they're tied up? What if it's having its annual maintenance?
What if the MRAP's shot up and not available?
What if there's other things that happen? And, originally we were only going to call for the MRAP. The chief, on my way there, the chief had sent me a text and said, if you need it, let us know. And, Chief Mueller, Chief Mueller, yes. Thankfully we had all three there. They were needed. It helped in the tactics of the situation, which I'm not going to go over, but they were needed. And so you take any one or two of them away, it would have still put us at a tactical disadvantage. And so by us having it, then we know we have it. And for some things that may not be that large, we would still be utilizing that MRAP. Say you have a single barricaded person in a home in Anthon. You may not call out the MRAP or this or that, and but we could still utilize that if we're using our SWAT team, because it's ours. We get to decide where it goes and when it's utilized, and have it there. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Any other citizen concerns? Moving on to item 14, any board concerns?
I just want to publicly thank the sheriff for coming tonight, and then also for your work and your leadership. I think when I talked to you about an hour's worth of sleep, and I'm sure that's the case for the county attorney, and as well as all involved, that's a traumatic thing to have to go through, to be under fire and put your life on the line. So just to echo what Keith was saying, and I'm sure the rest of the board. So thank you for what you did.
I agree. I think sometimes the public sentiment in our nation is becoming anti-police or anti-correction, and I want to remind our public that, what stops a bad guy with a gun? It's a good guy with a gun that has something that he's protecting behind them. And so, Sheriff, to you and to the chief and to all of our county deputies, they're in front of us protecting us, and we have to remember that there's accountability. And so, thank you for, I echo with Supervisor Taylor and all of us. Thank you for doing your jobs, because we know the good guys with the guns stop the bad guys. And because I believe, above all else, humans have a sin nature and our proclivity to destruction, and it's sad to see. I mean, I think all of us would agree. We hate to see the loss of 2 lives of Woodbury County residents, but at some point, evil has to be stopped, and evil intent must be stopped with goodness. And so, thank you to the Woodbury County Sheriff's Department for that.
Well said. Any other board concerns? Hearing none, we are adjourned.